city or the state of their neighborhood must, even though probably they can't define it consciously, but somehow in their hearts they must be asking this question. It's quite complicated as it's put here. We'll ask John to read it once again. Could you, John?
How is real love among human beings to be re-imparted to human relations in a community in which these relations have become impersonal, partly because of the community's scale, and partly because of a prevalent tendency to rationalize the structure and operation of social life? While in principle rationalization is desirable, some of its effects on human relations are undesirable. Can the Buddhist tradition produce a solution for this problem in the present social circumstances of Japan and the other so-called developed countries? Has life in Japan been depersonalized, and have human relations been made loveless in the same way and to the same extent as in the Western countries, where the traditional religious background is not Buddhist but Christian? And in the modern world, is computerization unavoidable? And can computerization and love coexist?
Very interesting, isn't it? Who have we got who is Japanese here? Megumi's here. Anyone else? Naomi?
Yeah.
Either Naomi or Megumi. Could you like to just say for a moment what you feel about society in Japan? Do you feel that Japan also society is becoming depersonalized? Just in your general observations. Where's Naomi? Oh, there you are. Depersonalization, meaning that relationships, particularly family relationships, are becoming weaker. And like I said, for example, in this country, because families no longer look after their old people, the looking after of old people, in a general sense, has had to be institutionalized. That means depersonalized, doesn't it? So the family ties are getting a little bit weaker, you think, even though they're so strong in Japan compared to the West? Yeah. Megumi? Yes. Right. And of course here, in this country, and indeed probably most other countries of Europe, but not all, have as weak family ties as we do now in this country. It's a great tragedy, isn't it? What other ways can you see human relationships being depersonalized? What about school? Let's start with Japan again. That's right. It's the highest suicide rate in the world for children. So that is depersonalization, isn't it? Yeah. Yes. Terrible. What about a teacher? Who's a teacher? Anybody? No teachers here? Not a single one? I don't mean Japanese this time, I mean... Yes.
I'm an assistant teacher teaching children sports.
Right.
So I noticed the problem is that if both parents are out to work, it's rather like the parents focus on career rather than that child. And I was shocked by the amount of children who are showing signs of stress and their conduct becoming bad, I would say, towards unfriendly, disturbed in some cases.
I see, yeah. Thank you. I think, in fact, there are so many examples of this, aren't there? Anyone else like to give an example of depersonalization? Yes, Jenny. With most doctors, I think that is so. There are exceptions, but certainly probably in the general run-of-the-mill. Yes, Rebecca?
If you go to the Catholic there's a ticket check. It's not even said to you by a person. It's one of those that lift up, the words after the box, and it said, serious accidents, waiting 1 hour. Minor injuries, at least 2 hours. Stretch cases straight through. If possible, go somewhere else. And there was just, that was what was
It's unbelievable. On a sign, you mean? One of these electric signs?
One of those electric news.
Yeah. Gosh. Yes. Terrible. Terrible, isn't it?
I think you see it even with as a medical student, you see the fact that there's no personal contact, you have no tutors, no personal tutors, and it's very much that medical education is like that, so that by the time you get to practice medicine, you've got what a human relationship is, what it means to have contact with somebody, and there are very few doctors who you really feel care about people. There's so many things to rush through and 60 people.
That's right. Of course, it's a very complicated problem. I mean, even if you take the one of medicine, which we happen to be on at this moment, there are reasons why they've had to put up that electric sign. Probably understaffed, lack of money, and so on and so forth. So it's not just one reason. There are many reasons that society in general is running adrift, isn't it? It's become too complicated to handle, in a sense. So, of course, and the only answer that comes out in the end to this great question is that Buddhism can change all this because it brings out Buddhahood. And, of course, since man and woman have got themselves into this mess, inevitably, therefore, they can get themselves out of it. But to get themselves out of it requires the maximum wisdom and maximum compassion, doesn't it? All the qualities of Buddhahood. Tremendous courage to challenge these things, and so on. So, Sensei with confidence says, yes, we can change all this. And I believe that, don't you? Of course it won't be done overnight, but I believe definitely we can change it. And of course it's already begun. When Lisa's finished her training and is fully qualified doctor, She goes into the field, the medical field, as a person who is strongly based their life on faith and is bringing out her Buddhahood every minute of the day. Therefore, often without realizing it, she'll be saying things and doing things which have a profound effect on everyone else around her. And that applies to each one of you in your own particular way and in your own particular field. That's the marvelous thing about this Buddhism. And often we don't realize it's happening. By the way, I haven't introduced you, Lisa from Israel. Lisa, please stand up and let everyone see you. So Lisa's on her own with a very small handful of members, but nevertheless increasingly strong in Israel. The beginnings of Kosen Rufu, isn't it? So, how many Gohonzons?
We don't know 5 Gohonzons.
Yeah.
6 and a couple of years like from London,
So 6 coming to London for Kojikai. Fantastic. But my point in what reminded me, I'm sorry, Lisa, to take so long to introduce you, but it reminded me, even in Israel, where there are so few, nevertheless, each one of those people who are chanting are having an effect. You can't see it. You can't even see it in this country with several thousand people chanting. You can't even see it clearly yet in America, where there's 500,000 chanting. But I believe you can now, just recently, you can begin to see it in Japan. On the surface of life, I mean. So, well, I can only answer that question in a very general way, because I can't really analyze it in detail, except that Japan is extraordinarily different now compared to what it was when I lived there up to 1973. It's very difficult to define. And of course, there are still many reactionary elements at work. But I feel in neighborhoods, there is somehow a different spirit in the air. And you can feel something different, something brighter, something, the grass is greener. You know what I mean? Difficult to define. But maybe when you come back, having lived there, you'll be able to say, no, my visit's now very short compared to having lived there. But you're going to be there for how long? 2.5 months. It'll be very interesting to hear what you feel when you come back. So anyway, this is, what other solution can you think of, really, to this whole problem? Because it's only through human beings' efforts and their maximum wisdom that we can find our way out of this tangle that human beings have got themselves in. So, speaking personally, I have no doubt that it's only through human beings revealing their Buddhahood, which is the highest state of light and which has been latent up to this point in time. And it's going to make an unbelievable difference. Each single person who is shakabuku makes a profound difference, because that person has an environment and they bring about change gradually in that environment. So Buddhahood, with Buddhahood, it means that people begin to tolerate the differences they see in other people, as well as protecting their own individuality. That's the point, isn't it, really? So this is a very crucial point so far as discussion meetings are concerned. Why do we keep on hammering away and saying people must follow that tradition of the Gakkai to go always, come hell, come high water, to the discussion meeting? And the answer to that is that the discussion meeting is a unique phenomenon. Nowhere else in the whole wide world will you find such a meeting of human beings. You will not find it in a sports club. You will not find it in the Girl Guides. You will not find it in a social club. You will not find anything like a discussion meeting anywhere else except in Nichiren Shoshu Soka Gakkai. What I mean by that is that it is the place where people of all different sorts come together. They're not members of the same club, the guests who come. And people of all types come together and discuss problems in an open and free way, which just doesn't exist anywhere else. And the reason why they're so productive is because each person who is practicing in that room, wherever it may be, is revealing their Buddhahood. And so it's the place where, whether you like it or not, you find you have to begin tolerating the differences you see in others. It compels you to challenge it. In the end, you may try to slip away or escape from it, but in the end you have to challenge this problem of relationship with everyone or every type of person in that room, in that district or in that group. And the guests feel that, of course. Isn't it? So the discussion meeting is an incredible event. The problem is that no one will realize it. That's what makes me mad. No one will realize it. They're creating something that is absolutely unique in this world. If only people would realize that more strongly, then they'd be bubbling over when they come to every discussion meeting. Don't you think? Anyway, that's the point. So, in a way, in that little nucleus of people, you can see the beginnings of the whole of world peace. You can see Toynbee's question being answered. And especially knowing that each one of those people in the discussion meeting has a different type of career, maybe a different type of work, and therefore when they leave that place, inevitably then they're not going to just drop their attitude to life. They'll take that attitude of life, which is expressed at the discussion meeting, into their own particular field of activity. The senseis often call them oases. They're oases of humanity in a great desert. So the number of oases are getting more and more right across the world. So pride in the discussion meeting is really justified. And the fact that one goes to it, therefore, is an incredible cause for one's own benefit in the future. So when one sees, only 50% going to discussion meetings, it's a very sad sight. It means that 50% are still not, in terms of cause and effect, reaping the benefits they should be. That's the point. And of course, they're attacked by Sanshashima because it's so important and beneficial to go to a discussion meeting. So something that says in them, I can't be bothered this afternoon, or hell, I'm going to take my girlfriend out, or there's a great concert on at the festival hall or whatever it may be. Nothing else but San Shishima. So they lose the benefit for that month, as it were, by not going. That's the sad part of it. So anyway, I'm sure you all go, and I hope you'll spread the news. Of course, there may be some, obviously, not everyone's life is smooth from beginning of the year to the end. So there may be family problems, some urgent reason why someone can't go. But the whole point is there are 50% of the members of NSUK not going. They haven't all got family problems or something urgent. Don't you think? So towards the end, Sensei talks about and emphasizes to TOYNBEE that in Buddhism we look upon the universe as being, as he termed it, one great life force. An incredible life force that creates the stars and the moon and the sunshine, all of us, animals, trees, plants, this great rhythm of life force. Of course, what we see all over throughout society is people making honzons of all sorts of shallow, changeable things like money or cars or girlfriends and husbands, wives. You know, they can change. What greater honzon to have than life itself? Life itself, which is indestructible and eternal. So it makes no sense. It's sort of too simple, almost. So there is a movement. I mean, the great thing is that there is a movement. More human beings, even in the last 10 years or 12 years since this book was written, there are more human beings who are concerned about things, I think. There are more human beings who are concerned about the destruction of the environment, definitely. And there are more human beings, I'm sure, concerned and alive to the fact that something must be done about nuclear power stations, for example. Because, in a way, we're being forced to be concerned because of the awful happenings that go on occurring all around us. And then, of course, equally, there's, so far as human-to-human relationships, we do see now something which wasn't existing at the time the book was written, the leaders of the two superpowers actually talking frankly to each other. That was unheard of when this book was written. So, of course, there are still remaining immense problems. And in a way, they still seem to be escalating. If we look at Ireland, it seems to be escalating. If we look at the problem of the Middle East and its instability, that seems to be escalating. But in the end, with all things, as I see it, whether on an individual or a collective basis, things, when they're going to change, do come to a head. If you chant to overcome cancer, it will seem for a time as if the cancer's getting worse. What happens is that the cancer does get worse, but the cells that are causing that illness overexert themselves and eventually collapse. That is what the natural defense system in the body does. So it's very interesting that when someone really chants to overcome an illness, it seems to get worse before it gets better. So this is sort of encapsulated in the saying, the Buddhist saying, the greatest evil is always followed by the greatest good. So I just pray that the greatest evil that we see going on all around us has really reached its peak. I guess it must be near it. And as this hits more and more people and forces them to open their eyes, basically, so of course at the same time the movement of SGI will grow and accelerate. Even now it's amazing where it's got to, since 1975 when it was formed. So Sensei goes on to say that wherever in the world the negative, destructive force of life is at work, we must pour our daimoku into it. We must be concerned, beyond our own little selves, to what's going on around us. If, you live in Brixton and you feel that Brixton is beginning to seethe once again with frustration or anger, then the only way is just to get all the members together and pour daimoku into Brixton, or the Middle East, or Iraq, or Iran, or Ireland, or your own hometown, or your own neighborhood, whatever concerns you. That's the point. Because daimoku is the key point. Daimoku is life force. Therefore, that will have some remarkable effect. And that, of course, has to be combined with ichinen. If we're chanting daimoku and our hearts are filled with doubt, then there's no ichinen, is there? If we want to overcome the situation in Ireland, or in our own families, or in our own offices, or whatever, if at the same time something in us is saying, this is never going to work, or this is too big a thing, to be overcome just by chanting, then it won't work. Ichinen is nothing else but that conviction that because nam-myoho-renge-kyo is the most powerful thing in the entire universe, it will work. That's the point. That's what ichinen is, isn't it? So that is the way of Kosen Rufu. In the end, everything begins and ends with daimoku. And of course, with the action we take. But the beginning and ending is daimoku. And that's why the Gonzen, in its wisdom, makes sure that we all have enough problems to keep us chanting lots of it. So John, maybe the best way to end is just by reading the last two statements in the book.
It's on page 342. It starts with President IKEDA. Certainly, because it is irreplaceable, human life has dignity. But, as you have said, to make that life dignified in the truest and most actual sense requires ceaseless effort. Each human being must bear the responsibility for his own dignity. The dignity of human life has existed since man became capable of high-level consciousness. But man has walked a historical path filled with dissension, hatred, and injuries. The only way for men to give dignity to all aspects of their lives on a practical plane is to abandon hate and injury and to strive to act with beauty and love. And Dr. TOYNBEE says, the level of man's ethical performance has been low, and it has not risen. And the level of his technological performance has risen in an ascending curve, which has risen more rapidly in our time than in any previous time of which we have a record. Consequently, the disparity between our technology and our ethics is greater today than it has ever been. This is not simply humiliating, it is mortally dangerous. Our present situation ought to make us feel humble, and this sense of humility ought to spur us on to achieve the dignity without which our life has no value, and without which our life cannot be happy. Human dignity cannot be achieved in the field of technology, in which human beings are so expert. It can be achieved only in the field of ethics, and ethical achievement is measured by the degree in which our actions are governed by compassion and love, not by greed and aggressiveness.
Thank you. So, as right to the end, Sensei gives TOYNBEE the last word, and in that way shows his immense respect from this great old man, and also his gratitude for sparing the time, I think, to talk with someone who at that time was an unknown Buddhist leader. So, that's the last lecture, and it's been thoroughly enjoyable doing them with you. And what I'll look forward to now is our final sort of closing ceremony and all the rest of it. And John's going to talk about that for a moment.
Yes, we are hoping, I think we mentioned it the time before last, to have a final session, the young men and the young women together, a sort of closing ceremony for this series of the New Century Group on Saturday, the 8th of October. That's after all the summer courses. And it will be here at Richmond Adult College. And it'll start around about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I say around about because we haven't finally planned it out. So what we're hoping to do is have a final session together, and with a gongyo and maybe some experiences, and then have a break, and then have some food and a dinner type. Last time we had a dinner type dance. Whether we'll be able to manage a dinner dance this time, we'll see what the space is like and what the catering equipment and catering department of NSUK can do. But anyway, we should finish around 9:30 to 10 o'clock in the evening. Okay.
I don't see why we can't have a dinner and a dance. We've got a band, haven't we? We've got the floor. Not in this room, of course, John doesn't mean, but in the big hall downstairs.
Yeah. So
anyway.
we'll let you know more details, but if you can put in your diary the Saturday, the 8th of October. Okay, then we'll all be together then for the final ceremony.
Great. Okay, we'll look forward to that. Thank you very much indeed.
Okay.